She's an incredible leader and a very, very important political leader at this time in our fights. Thank you, ILYSE.
Thanks, Gloria. It's great to be here with you guys today, and I want to start by telling you a story, and it's a story that you've heard over and over and over, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. Tomorrow, in addition to being the day that we're going to take Blanche Lincoln down, is the 50th day that the oil will continue to flow in the Gulf with no end in sight. The 50th day. 11 people are dead, thousands of fishermen are economically devastated, and ecosystems beyond what we can imagine will take decades to rebound if they ever do. Everyone's calling it a disaster, right? Everyone. President Obama's called it a disaster. EPA, Salazar, every elected official is elbowing each other out of the way to call it a disaster. Even Tony Hayward, when he can take his foot out of his mouth, the BP CEO, is calling it a disaster. There's another word that I want to talk about. It's the word spill. I've been rankled by spill lately because a spill is what a 3-year-old does with his milk. A spill is what happens when a cargo truck hits an icy patch on the highway and goes over. This was not a spill. This was a calculated gamble that BP took with the help of our government for the last several decades. It was a calculated gamble that the American people lost. This was no accident. This was a betrayal of our democracy, made possible by decades of relentless lobbying, a revolving door between K Street and our government, and a willingness of BP and other corporations like it to pay fines for admitted legal violations, in BP's case, of both environmental and safety laws. And you know why they're willing to pay those fines? Because they are a drop in the bucket compared to the profits that they will make if they do not change their ways. In the last 5 years, BP paid $373 million in fines. $373 million in fines. Think about what that could do for education, for clean energy, for jobs, for homelessness. They paid $373 in fines without a thought, and that's nothing compared to that is much more than they had to pay for lobbying, of which they paid $16 million last year, because they made in the first quarter of 2010 $6 billion. What's $400 million over the course of several years when you're making $6 billion a quarter? They got a waiver on the rig that exploded. It wasn't just random waivers they were getting left and right. The rig that exploded, through lobbying, BP was granted a waiver. People in our country, even nonviolent drug offenders in some states, get put away for life after 3 strikes. BP had 760 strikes against them. Makes you want to run a bill called 761 strikes and you're out? Think we could get anyone in Congress to stand up for that? This did not happen by accident, nor is it an anomaly. I mean, BP, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America. I've taken to calling the BP disaster Wall Street underwater, because it's indicative of the same systemic corrosion of our democracy. I stood up here last year and I spoke to you all and I said that there's sort of this false dichotomy in the age of Obama between the insiders and the outsiders, and that our responsibility was to not just beat the door down, but actually take the door off the hinges and smash the windows out so there was no more inside and outside. And I'm here to tell you this year that I was wrong last year, that I was wrong. There is an inside and an outside. And it is our job now to actually call what's inside, and that is democracy ruled by corporate elite, and those of us who can't afford lobbyists, who are paying the price for what decades of corporate influence in our government have done. We are on the outside. and we will continue to be on the outside until we demand that every single politician that is elected in Washington, D.C. choose whether they're going to be on the inside or the outside. We ran an ad last week that said, President Obama, you did not create this problem that led to the BP disaster, but you can end it. And I believe that we can. And the reason that we can is some of the stuff that Marcos talked about. The reason that now is the time to end it is, well, 3 reasons that I have, but there are probably more. But the first one is because we won. Because we did everything we were supposed to do. Because we mobilized the resources to take back both chambers. Because we pulled out every stop and created an unprecedented campaign from the outside to elect Barack Obama president in a historic election. We won. We played by the rules. We got the small donors. We went door to door. And yet we're still facing some very, very insurmountable problems, which means that we recognize it's going to take more than one election, more than Democratic Party controlling all the chambers in order to fix our democracy. We also know that it's time because we fought. We fought post-Obama. We fought post-Obama for the health care bill that passed, and that is a real victory. But what we learned from that is that it's fighting tooth and nail. It is fighting tooth and nail. It was not electing the right people, but it was actually getting people out in our cities and towns every week for what was supposed to be 3 months to pass a bill. Back week after week, as 3 months became 6, as 6 became 9. And they kept fighting. And they learned, and we learned together, that you can win when you come back and keep fighting. And finally, the reason now is the time to do this is because we have no option. There is too much at stake. If we do not call what's inside, inside, and what is outside, outside, we will become characters in a story that we know to be false. We'll become part of a narrative that says that we need to change course because President Obama overreached. He was too liberal. Because the Tea Partiers had more strength than we did. I'm here to tell you I think that Tea Partiers are a distraction. They're dangerous. There are some very dangerous elements, and when they get racist and when they spit on our congressmen and when they do things that are just completely outside the bounds of what we believe our democracy to be about, we have to call them on it. We absolutely have to call them on it. But they are the distraction, and the corporate interests that have ruled Washington for decades would be so happy to watch progressives and Tea Partiers go at it in this election so that they can continue with business as usual. So the third reason that we're going to do this is because we have no option. There's too much at stake. I've got great news, though. I walk around and I listen to all the commentators say, the base is depressed, the base is apathetic, the base is complacent. I have the privilege of representing 5 million members in every district in every state in this country, and we are not apathetic. We are not depressed. We are willing to get out and fight for the people that fight for us.